Welcome to the Fast Host Proactive Podcast, Spill the IT. Each episode, we'll sit down with some of the amazing Proactive team and chat through their experiences of the ups and downs of IT infrastructure management in small businesses. There's always plenty to chat about.
Well, we're back again at Fast Host Proactive HQ at their data centre here in Worcestershire. Rather impressive data centre again. Fantastic facility. With me today, I have Gary and Aaron. Today, we're going to be talking about proactive SaaS, software as a service. So we're going to be talking about the nuances around that. But before we start, why don't you just introduce yourself? Just tell people who've not listened to this podcast before a little bit about yourself. Aaron, let's start with you. Come on, tell us who you are. I mean, you've come from quite a diverse background. You've been involved in quite a few diverse things, haven't you?
I've been through a lot of trends over the last 10 years. Yeah, I got involved when virtualization first became a big thing, around about 2012. Sounds about right, and that really was the birth of the cloud. Done a lot of cybersecurity in the meantime, but actually cloud is where people want to go.
Yeah.
So this is where I am.
Fantastic. Well, if you survived cybersecurity, this is
Not sure anyone survives it.
This is a breeze. Gary, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
So I'm the solutions consultant here at Proactive. So I work with Aaron and the other sales team and our both existing and prospective customers to design solutions that meet all or as many of their business needs as we can.
Fantastic. So let's talk about SaaS. What are some of their challenges? So when SaaS are starting to look at a cloud provider and a managed service provider to actually support what they do, what are some of their challenges? What are they looking for? What do you see?
I think there's two aspects, really. You've got the aspect of what they need from IT, but you've also got what they need from or for the business more widely. When you've got a SaaS company looking to achieve some kind of growth, to achieve a better experience for its customers, some kind of target on revenue, fundamentally it relies on the software that they are taking to market. You have to develop a software that is responsive to the customer's demands, but also one that is responsive to the wider market. And when in the modern day everything is based on tech, it's increasingly competitive. So if your competitors are putting in brand new features and they're taking business away, you don't just need to respond to that, you also need to think one step ahead. What are we going to do next? And when it comes to the challenges around that, it's that speed of necessary development, but it's also the speed of demand of your clients. Now, I think from a technical perspective, it's a lot more, and Gary, you can talk about the tech, but it's a lot more than just wanting a bigger box, right? It's actually about understanding what we need to compete with from a whole wider technology landscape. So when you're growing that business, when you're scaling your business, it's not just the platform you're developing, it's your entire go-to market strategy. It's your sales teams, it's your marketing teams. There's a wider tech estate which has implications on all of IT in your SaaS business. And it's quite simple. The more customers you're winning, the more data and traffic you're processing, the more compute resource you need. It's fundamental. So a lot of companies will be going, well, let's think about scalability and cloud and all these fancy things. But when you let that run away from you, it opens up an increasing volume of risk on an attack surface that people quickly lose control of. And so what happens is you end up diverting your own internal resources from focusing on the development, the actual customer experience stuff, to actually just try and keep on top of all the BAU stuff. And when you then fall into that trap, in fact, your strategic goals, your development goals start falling behind, and then your growth stalls.
Interesting. Gary?
For me, there's two words. The first one is stability.
Yeah.
The second one is performance.
Okay.
Anything you're providing as a service, there is an expectation from those end users that it's going to be there when they need it, whenever that might be, 24/7, 365. And when they do get access to the platform, it's got to work well. And it's those two fundamental things that if you don't have those, anything else you do is a complete waste of time.
So is it at the beginning of the journey? So obviously from a SaaS perspective, you've got a group of developers, and they might even be a startup, for instance, and they've got this great application as a SaaS application, and then they're looking at hosting. Do they get drawn? Sometimes do people get just drawn to who are the usual providers in this space because they just think that's the right place to be? And then at what point do they say, actually, yeah, this is not really giving us what we need. We've got to look at. And is that the typical war stories you see? The things in the marketplace.
Very much so.
Yeah.
We've got a client who we onboarded a little while ago who went through that exact same journey.
Yeah.
So they are a SaaS provider. They provide an EDI platform, electronic data interchange. So how do you get computer system A that talks French to speak to computer system B that speaks German, figuratively, and they're the middleman that does that translation. So they were building the platform on Azure. They had noticed there were some limitations that were impacting them. So particularly with some of the big hyperscalers, you can only buy VMs in certain packages. So they have their large, medium, small kind of size compute capacities. And sometimes it's a big jump between the two. And there's invariably data migration and all this kind of stuff. So they weren't particularly enjoying that.
Yeah, don't make it easy, do they?
No,
not
exactly.
really.
Part of the other factor was around transparency of billing, or should I say complexity of billing. And again, I think we've spoken about this previously around how,
around consumption and charges and
get a cost calculator spreadsheet,
Yeah.
then get your degree in theoretical maths, and you might just about roughly be able to calculate what your next bill is going to be. And they were really struggling with that aspect.
And also not being very predictive in relation to those costs that are coming in. Yeah.
And I think one of the aspects that contributes to that, and we're seeing stories around this in the IT press at the moment, is around automatic scaling. It seems to be a big thing. We can automatically scale your solution. We don't do that. And we don't do that for very good reason. When you do automatic scaling, you are saying if CPU or resource X goes above limit Y, put more on that. And at no point does anybody look at, well, what's causing that? What's driving that increase in demand?
Or is there balance of capacity elsewhere, and that's not even being taken into consideration?
It can be even worse than that, Graham. The stories that we're seeing at the moment are people who've signed up for free Amazon-type products for storage that are billed on the amount of requests for data. There's no limit on who can request data. I read a story the other day about an individual developer who signed up for a free account, and his first bill was £1,200 because the bad guys were constantly pulling data from his store. Similarly, we've had instances that customers have relayed to us where their solution is automatically scaled because it's under DDoS attack. So not only are you under attack, you're funding the extra capacity to cope, to facilitate that attack. So with our solutions, we've got that agility of scaling because of the way we architect our platform. But if we get to the point where thresholds are being triggered, we've got an actual human being looking at what are the causes. Do we want to scale, or do we need to do something else? Yeah. And then we can engage the client and say, look, this is what we're seeing, this is what we think you need to do. Let's come with an implementation plan.
Yeah, and that's a huge benefit. And we talk about proactive, and we use it as a word, but that's in the true essence of what you guys do here at Fasthost. Proactive is like, hang on, something is triggering something else. Let's just have a look at that for a minute. Where's that coming from? I mean, Aaron, that must be a huge conversation when you're having with people in the market.
Yeah, massively. And actually, there was a word you used at the end there, which is about engagement. And I think that's a key differentiator, that businesses, especially SaaS companies, when they're looking for these scalable type solutions, they need to engage with the providers. And it's not always easy to do that. I mean, you could say hats off to some of those public cloud providers for their fantastic marketing, who seem to make it so easy to go and buy without actually helping engage these customers in what the implications may be 1 month, 6 months, 12 months down the line. And I think for companies, when they are looking at these kind of solutions, is don't do yourself a disservice by just looking at what do we need now. actually engage your business leaders from across different units, understand the implications on IT and the landscape, and then work with people that are actually going to help you calculate and forecast what's going to be the demand on IT in 6 months, in 12 months, what's the actual growth of the business looking like, not just the scalability you need in a platform now.
So I guess at the end of the day, that planning is really important. It's almost like, okay, we've done our business plan in relation to how much product we're going to sell, but also as well be as diligent in relation to your requirement for IT services or IT requirements, and looking at that scalability of when those peak demands are going to be.
Totally.
Absolutely key.
Going back to the client, the EDI client I was talking about.
Yes.
So when we first engaged, they had a very clear plan of what they wanted the platform to do and the different models on that. So what we did was actually build them the platform they're going to need at end game, and do all of that design work up front. Then only spin up a small section of that solution.
So you looked at the end point, and then you brought it back to say, right, that's where you're going to get to.
Yeah. What do we need now?
What do we need to build now that will make sure it won't fall over when you get to that point? I guess. Yeah.
And even better than that. So we've actually done pretty much all the hard work up front, so that when it comes to that point where scalability is required, it's going to be really, really seamless.
Yeah.
But from the client's perspective, at the moment they've got the platform they need now. If they need next year's platform tomorrow, we can deliver that tomorrow, or we can deliver it next year. We can deliver it incrementally as it grows, so that they're not having to overspend on resources because they might need them in 12 months' time but don't need them now. You can have the resources you need at the time you need them.
And actually, a lot of what you're saying there, it's not just about being able to deliver the platform they need, but actually something else that our customers really value is just the monthly checks. Because of course, when you're in a SaaS organization, plans don't always go to plan, right? You've said it could be tomorrow, it could be next year. But if you are seeing changing demands that you actually need us to respond to as well, that's where just monthly checks. It's such a simple concept, but it's so incredibly valuable when you're engaging with your provider in that manner.
And do you find some of those SaaS providers, do you find that the market has caught them off guard? The success of their products sometimes is like, oh my God, this is like, we've got to go. We got to get going.
It's a difficult balance.
Yeah, of course it is.
I've seen it. You've got budget to balance versus demand. I don't think many people get it right first time. You hear all the time of new product launches, and on the first day that new service X launches, first thing that happens, loads of people go, this is great, I'm going to have some of this, and it just falls over because they've had to build a platform to the budget they had at that particular time when the demand wasn't necessarily known. So yeah, it's a really difficult balancing act.
So obviously the challenge is we have the big hyperscalers out there that are selling these services. We get that, and we know who they are, the elephant in the room, the people, those that should not be promoted. But, why are people still giving their time, their attention to those providers when it's clear to me that certainly there are some big shortfalls in some of those services or approaches, and obviously that's your difference. And I don't want to be banging the sales drum too much here, but for me it's really quite, listening to what you're both saying, it's very obvious that actually those considerations are very relevant, very real, and should be applied. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, technology is technology. We can supply the same type of technologies that the big hyperscalers can supply. The big hyperscalers supply the same technology that the other big hyperscalers supply.
Yeah, nobody's got a secret sauce in that, have they? Because you're all running the same server technologies and approaches and things like that.
Exactly that. Where we differentiate is twofold. In the as Aaron said, I'd like to think we've got a far greater level of engagement with our clients. We talk to them about what does their business need, not just how many servers do you need and how many widgets do you want in your server. That's the to be fair, probably the less part of the conversations we have. Again, because we're flexible and we can scale, it doesn't really matter where we start, to be honest. It's more on what does the business need. Whereas I think with a lot of the bigger providers, it's, as Aaron sort of said, it's really easy to make a purchase, but a dog isn't just for Christmas, and nor's a server. You've got to understand what the requirements are going to be moving forward.
Yeah. It strikes me, that it's almost like a business intelligence. And I know that's not something you actually promote as a business, but it's almost like you've got that veneer, you've got that business intelligence, that perspective of actually, guys, it's almost like a separate consultancy on its own right. And I'm sure you work with IT consultants that actually do that on behalf of your clients, but it's almost like you've got to have that right perspective.
We're lucky, okay? So we have 25 plus years of our own e-commerce and SaaS offerings as a hosting provider. So we're able to draw on all of that experience, all of the challenges that we've come across in those 25 years, and advise clients on how not to face the same challenges that perhaps we did in the early days of the company, and also what we hear from other businesses. And we've got this wealth of information that we have available to us, and we can then pass that on to our prospective clients and advise them accordingly.
I mean, I see something similar from my sales background. Speaking with lots of different companies, so often I come across people, organisations, trying to solve a problem rather than thinking about the bigger picture, without understanding how this problem has come about, because perhaps they've not addressed points A, B, and C before they've got to 1, 2, 3, and so they solve one thing, but it creates another problem, and they're just jumping from one issue to the next. And I've got to be honest, the tech landscape doesn't help largely. Tech organisations, the way that they promote themselves and advertise themselves as, solvers to this problem, that problem, with this great 3-letter acronym and all sorts of acronyms coming out all the time, it actually creates a really confusing landscape for buyers. And so...
Yeah, what do you believe? What do you believe? What's the best to believe?
What do you? Yeah. So, and I think because you end up with this confusing ecosystem, people are actually crying out for just simplicity. It's like, right, rather than trying to work through all this noise of all these providers, I just want something that's easy. I want something I can understand that's going to solve this problem. But actually, by just jumping from problem to problem, buying point solution, they're doing themselves a disservice.
Why don't you just tell them to sod it? I'm going to allow you to now expand on that, because Gary, you and I had that sort of interchange, and I know it's an acronym for something else, but I thought it was quite interesting.
There is a reason I don't work in marketing.
Yeah, no,
and I think sod it, which is scalable on-demand IT.
Fantastic.
But joking aside, because of the way that we have that agility and that scalability, we could actually say to our customers, don't worry about scalability, sod it.
Yeah, love it. Well, listen, I'm going to see if we can get that into some marketing material going forward.
That would be the high point of my entire life.
I can just see an animation on LinkedIn. What do you think? So let's just bring this to the close. If you were sort of talking to people who are in that SaaS market, what are the real three takeaways from this podcast today? The three things that people have really got to focus in on in relation to their business, the future point of their business, and what they should be really focusing on right now. Aaron, what do you think?
3 things from me. We're going to take in 3 things from me.
3 things from you, and then we'll take 3 things from.
3 things from me. I think you. Number one, you really need to look ahead at where you want your business to be.
Yep.
What it's going to be doing for your customers in the future. All right, number 2, with that as your North Star, incorporate all your leaders in a plan together.
That's interesting, yeah.
And number 3 is don't jump into just what looks easy first time round, because as we've talked about with some of these other providers, you pay the price.
Yeah.
It seems easy up front. It's not.
Yeah, good.
Do work with people, do communicate, engage.
Yeah, good points. Gary?
So the three key takeaways for me, there's a little bit of crossover with Aaron, is be aware of what you're buying when you're setting yourself up on a new platform. You've got to look at things like vendor lock-in. You've got to work, you've got to understand the amount of maintenance ongoing that a platform's going to need. And again, like Aaron said, don't just look at the tech. Look at where you want the business to be, because the tech is the facilitator of that, not the cause. And then I suppose, last of all, one of the most common phrases I hear from clients is, I just want to find out what your just wants to are, and those are the things to focus on.
Oh, that's another great point. I like that. Guys, you've been great. It's been a real interesting session. I've learned loads here today. Thanks for coming in. It's been good. And that's it for today. And we'll see you next time for the next session of Spill the IT with Fast Host Proactive.